Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Today, we welcome Kevin Helash to the podcast. Kevin is the CEO of Biotalys, an ag tech company developing protein-based biocontrol solutions for crop and food protection. Kevin has a 30-year career committed to supporting the agricultural industry and its most innovative advancements. Kevin is passionate about the future of sustainable agriculture. Listen in as he and Monty discuss these exciting advancements in science and technology.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the AgEmerge podcast, joined today by Kevin Helash. Welcome, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Very well, Monty. Very nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin has spent a lot of his career in the biological community, or world, universe, whatever you want to describe it. But today, he is leading up a startup company who's bringing some really interesting technologies to market. He's going to be able to have a chance to dive in and tell us all about. But Kevin, give us a little bit of your background and how you got involved in this part of agriculture.
Yeah, thank you, Monty. Well, I grew up on a family farm, our family farm that my grandfather homesteaded actually in Manitoba, Canada, and went to school at the University of Manitoba. I got my ag business degree there and worked 27 years for Agrium, which is now Nutrien. 20 years of my time there on the wholesale side, where we produced and sold synthetic fertilizers, a full line. Very fortunate to have traveled the world, lived and worked in Canada, US, 3 years down in Argentina, which was quite interesting. And then in 2010, Monty, I moved over to grow our Canadian retail business, which at that time was called Crop Production Services, now Nutrien Ag Solutions. And, I'll give you a little bit of a history of how I ended up here today. So it was there that I was introduced to the biological part of the business. And I was amazed at how many different companies with new technologies were coming in to visit us as a retailer, largest retailer in Canada, to support their product lines. And I was also quite impressed when we talked to growers about, putting on another pound of fertilizer or another spray of a fungicide or an insecticide, we got pretty good pushback, right? In terms of, I'm going to stick with my program that I have. But when we talk to them about biologicals or products with a softer, footprint, naturally derived, that had benefits for soil health, plant health, help to increase yield and or at least stabilize yield, give them more yield stability, we got a very warm response. And then actually it was one of the fastest growing segments of my business up there, or our business. And at that time, Monty, I made a decision that, this is going to be the new frontier of agriculture and where I want to spend my time. So, I've ran a couple. This is my fourth ag biological company I've ran. As we mentioned just before the call started, I was CEO of Marrone Bio Innovations, and then one before that, and several since then. And I've been here at Biotalys since October.
Well, welcome aboard. That's an interesting observation you said about very warm response from farmers. Now typically when you bring on something new, something that is out of the norm and not proven, there's a lot of skepticism. So why do you say that on the warm response versus the skeptical? Is it going to work, or does it work as good, and those kind of things?
Right. Well, don't get me wrong, there's no shortage of skepticism. And I would also say, in fair, biologicals have been around for quite some time, and I would say that in general, when a farmer hears the term biological, they hear it's very expensive and it doesn't work. And perhaps in the early days, that was quite true. But the amount of data, I mean, the way I approach it, Monty, is with data, right? I mean, go back to the science. What do your field trials say? What is the mode of action? And then you just start from that platform, right? That, these are the features and benefits of the products, and here's how it can work for you on your operation. And of course, I wouldn't expect any grower to commit a whole farm to a new product, right? That they haven't tried before, especially, something in the biological space. But, over my, let's say 13 years that I've really been involved in the biological sector, I mean, the advancements in the science and the technology has been phenomenal, right? So, and I expect over the next 10 to 20 years, Monty, it's going to continue to advance quickly. And these products will just be part of the overall program. And it's one of the reasons why this segment of crop input products are growing at double digit CAGR, and expected to do so for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it'd help everybody listening just to understand the whole breadth of biologicals, right? So biologicals is a big category with multiple kind of areas of emphasis. So maybe walk everyone through that a little bit as far as this sector and what all's called, because
Mm,
everybody today
mm-hmm.
claims they have a biological, right? So yeah, there's
Yeah, yeah,
biopesticides
yeah.
like and controls, there's stimulants, there's plant health, there's
Mm-hmm.
actual living sport. Walk folks through that a little bit.
Well, you're absolutely correct. It is a very broad category, and biologicals is a catch-all term. I think you're exactly right. So the way I think about it, Monty, is you have a big category of biostimulants. And let me back up a second and say that the rules and the characterizations of these products is still being developed, both in the U.S. And around the world, right? I mean, there are people trying to get their head around, what exactly are these products and what do they do, and are they fertility? Are they soil health? Are they, biotic stress relievers? Are they gene expression tools? So it's evolving, right? Let me make that statement.
And really, 20 years ago, because there was so little understanding of genomics and genomic testing, those kind of things, a lot of them were just not even allowed to be labeled for sale, correct? In the industry,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it was such an unknown, So we at least we've kind of moved away from that, right? We've moved away from snake oil definition to now it's this broad category. So yeah, sorry to jump in there,
Mm-hmm.
but continue with what
Mm-hmm.
you're
No,
saying
no,
there
no,
on
no, no.
that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, 20 years ago, these were really unregulated space, let's say, if there anything was out there, right? To where we've gone now, where there are very, I'd say, clear definitions of what these products are, what their characteristics are, what's certified organic and what's not. But so when I think about the categories at a very high level, Monty, I would say there's a big group of biostimulants. And then there are the biocontrol products, which would be biofungicides, bioinsecticides, bionematicides, and bioherbicides. So that's kind of the way I think about it. And even when we think about fertility products, for the most part, they are classified as a biostimulant, given the definition of a fertility product has to have a meaningful amount of NPK in it, right? So if you have a microbial microbe in your product, or a consortia of microbials that enhance nutrient uptake, for me, that still comes under the biostimulant sector, right? So then there's a whole other discussion around, okay, let's break about the biostimulants in terms of what they do, right? And that's a couple-hour discussion, and I'm probably not the right one to get into that level of detail.
I think there was a week-long conference recently in Italy just talking about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
in a yearly
exactly.
conference that they do. So, well, talk to us a little bit about who is Biotalys and what attracted you to this organization.
hmm So, so who is Biotalys? We are a Belgian-based company, publicly traded on the Euronext. We've been around for over 10 years. And what we do is we are developing large proteins to combat pathogens and pest insects in the ag sector. So it is, for me, a technology platform that I have never seen before. So basically, what we're doing is going protein to protein in a pathogen cell to disrupt the activity of that. So it's a very targeted uh, biological interaction that we're focusing on. And what's really interesting, and so this technology has been used for over 20 years in the pharma industry, large protein VHHs. And we are I would say, the pioneering company to bring that technology into agriculture. It's a completely new platform. Our modes of action are absolutely new. And what's very interesting is that if you think about a cell wall of a botrytis fungus, for example, can have literally thousands of proteins. Every one of those proteins, if they are performing a critical function and we can disrupt that function, that's a new mode of action. So for us, we can develop multiple modes of action for a single pathogen, which again is something I've never seen before. So to answer your question, why am I here? The ability to create not only new modes of action, but also to stack them together on top of one another to help with efficacy, potency, and resistance is something I've not seen before. So that's why I'm here. I think it's completely revolutionary in terms of what this platform can do for agriculture.
Well, I see that, your first product that you're working with started, like you said, to address botrytis. Not everybody knows what that is, but it has a major impact on almost everyone every day in the food chain. So, talk to us about that, the scale of the problem, and what kind of value this can bring, and
Mm,
why that's so important compared to what we're currently doing to control this in strawberries, grapes, and those kind of fruit crops.
yeah. Well, you're exactly right, Monty. I would say that if you think about the biofungicide industry and you say botrytis, everybody's like, yeah, major problem, arguably the number one problem, around the world, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of how big is it? I mean, it is a massive market, Monty. I mean, we've segmented ourselves, um, in terms of what we think we can address, but the potential we're talking is, major, right?
Yeah.
I'll just say
I
that.
there's billions of dollars of crop loss associated with
Yeah,
with this.
yeah,
It
exactly.
it's a huge problem.
It is, and so that's where we started with the Voca,
Mhm.
which is the first product out of our platform, which is currently in the registration review with the EPA as well as with the European regulatory authorities. And then we expect to have next gen products coming out after that, Monty, and then moving on. And uh, as we continue to advance our technology, not only with our internal resources, but with our collaboration partners, which include some of the largest players in the industry, as well as, I would say, leading universities out there. We expect our cost of goods and our efficacy to just continue to get better and better, which allows us to get broader and broader penetration of the market globally.
Okay, so non-organic strawberries, let's just pick on them for an example, traditionally make the dirty dozen list, right? Because of the whoever publishes that list, because the amount of pesticides have to be applied to them, and one of them is largely to control mold on that's what's scoring them so low in the dirty dozen, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. So describe how a farmer has to control botrytis today with conventional chemistries. Like how many applications do you
Well,
have to apply to a
yeah,
strawberry field, and how often? It's kind of mind blowing, isn't it?
it is. And then strawberries are an interesting crop because it's continually bearing fruit, right? So
Hmm.
there, it's always susceptible to botrytis, right? So it's a tough one, Monty. But I mean, I'd say that in our testing, let's say on grapes, where I've got, I mean, the data in front of me, I mean, we typically would see three applications, and I apologize to any vineyard vine growers out there if I'm misrepresenting that, but I mean, we think about three, and where we're positioning Evoca is one of the three, right? So
Hmm.
um, we're not thinking we're coming out and replacing an entire fungicide program that growers have been using. What we're looking to do is develop products that growers can use in conjunction with their current program to lessen the chemical load, right, on the plants and on the environment, and two, to introduce a new product would help them with resistance management.
That's a great point because of we're required by law to rotate group modes of action, or excuse me, chemistry groups
Mm-hmm.
in a traditional control context. So that limits your choices. Even though you might have three choices to choose from, you're kind of locked in on what you do when. So I think something else is
Well,
important.
and
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Monty.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that's important for everyone to realize is that traditional fungicide approaches are more of a maybe a grenade approach. So where we're out there and we when we apply a fungicide, we're getting maybe the botrytis that we want, but there's several beneficials that may exist on the leaf surface that are helping us resist pests or disease. There's
Mm-hmm.
also several within the soil
Mm-hmm.
that are helping with nutrient
Mm-hmm.
cycling and the health and diversity of the soil that we're inadvertently affecting. And I think this type of
Mm-hmm.
approach, or a biocontrol approach, where you're synthesizing the protein that can hit just that cell wall at that space, it's more of a rifle approach to the problem. Is that a good way to say that? And that's kind of one of the exciting
Absolutely.
nuances to this.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. You nailed it. So yeah, we are going with a what we call a targeted approach, right? So we're actually looking for a VHH that attaches to a very specific epitope on the cell, on the protein cell wall,
Mm.
right? And then it's a very strong uh, bind that occurs there, and then we don't have to worry with large molecules as much as small molecule chemistry about off-target effect and impact, right? It's very specific, which to me is another one of the fantastic attributes of this technology, is that it doesn't go where it's not supposed to go, and as well it degrades down into amino acids, which is beneficial, at the end of the day, to the soil and to the environment. So it's nice from that perspective, right? There's a lot of, I would say, soft benefits to the product, on especially on beneficials, right? I mean, everybody is well aware. We need to ensure we're not impacting them when we're looking for our control that we're seeking.
So a lot of that times when we're spraying a fungicide, and especially insecticides, farmers have to go through a process called a bee check. So bees are registered and
Mm,
have to make sure that they're not flying in a certain distance from a farm every time an application is made. This would be such a thing then that would not it would not be a requirement, correct? Because there's just no off target. Well, depending on how the regulations are written, of course, but they
mhm.
wouldn't have those off target effects is the benefit, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, that we certainly will be screening our products. Well, absolutely, we'll be screening our products, Monty, so that there are no impacts to beneficials or humans or any living creature, at all, right? I mean, that's very, very important and a very strict criteria for us.
The AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. The ASN team is hands-on, digging in and invested in regenerative agriculture. Along with the proper plant nutrition and biologicals to boost your soil microbiome, we provide the ideas and implementation guidance to support you on your soil health journey. So stop farming the same way and contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm.
So you've been down this path before, like you said, with other biocontrol organizations that you've had the chance to lead, especially early on. I would imagine your team had quite an opportunity to almost educate the regulators, because it was, especially like at Marrone Bio Innovations, you were really um, leading into a new area, right? That hadn't been explored before. Um, does it does it currently take more time to get through the EPA approval process for biocontrols than the traditional chemistries, because they're just not set up for it, don't know what to look for, unfamiliar with it? Or describe those differences, because you've seen both sides.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, is it taking longer to get through the process? I would say a fair statement is yes. The next question is why, right?
Thank-
So
And thank you for making my questions clearer. I appreciate that.
no,
But
uh,
that why is that when something seems to be better? Okay,
yeah,
why is it taking longer?
yeah. So I mean, I really have a lot of empathy for the EPA and regulatory bodies around the world, because they are literally inundated with products coming to them, right? I mean, we were talking a little bit about Pam Marrone, and Pam and I sat down a few years ago, and we mapped out what we thought was the top biological companies, that came to our mind in our experience, right? And then I went down to Colombia visiting a customer down there, and I made the comment that we mapped out 200, and they looked at me and said, "Kevin, there's 200 in Colombia alone. Never mind globally, right?" So Monty, I guess good news, bad news, right? I mean, the good news is there's a tremendous amount of horsepower, both brain power and money going into this sector, creating new products. Everybody wants to get registered. And so the EPA is, I imagine, right? I don't know for sure, but I imagine their casebook is, never been this big ever, right? Is what they're seeing right now. And the EPA is seeing a lot of brand new stuff, right? This is not, just another active ingredient that we've seen before that has a little twist on it. These are completely new things like ours, right? They've never seen large protein BHH technology come before them. And rightfully so, they are taking their time to make sure that our products are doing exactly what we intend and not having any off-target consequences, right? So is it taking longer for biologicals than for synthetic chemistry? I would say no, we're still, if you think about a new active, I would say we're still, I think, quicker. But I mean, we are growing together, right? I mean, as an industry and the EPA, the regulatory bodies, a lot of countries are still trying to figure out what the heck these things are. You want to bring in foreign microbes into my country and put them in the soil that, you brought in from Brazil, for example, or the United States, am I okay with that? Right. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, it's a busy sector with lots of decisions that have to be made.
Okay, so let's talk about things that we just don't know, right? So that's kind of hard to do, but uh, and maybe that's an unfair comparison, or we'll try to draw a parallel when we're looking at some of the chemistries, which we now have the history behind us. Um, when we started out, I'll point a bony finger at glyphosate, for example, and I think one of the reasons why glyphosate's gotten such a scrupulous look at, is because it's obviously the number one um, herbicide used worldwide, and just so much of it's been out, and it's been out for so long. It's just like, every time you see a feature film on Netflix about how bad the fast food industry is, they always feature McDonald's. Well, there's not McDonald's in the space. There's everything else. Okay, so but glyphosate is the McDonald's. So we'll pick on that. When we first used it, the reps would go around and say, "Oh gosh, you can drink this stuff. It's so safe." They'd pour it on their hands. You don't need to use gloves. Just spray it early and often, and just go for it. No consequences. And now over time we've learned that there is human health consequences. There is long-term soil biology stimulation and biopesticide action going on in the soil. We've learned about nutrient status changes in the plant. And all of these are not, these are all, documented, peer-reviewed, published things that are going on. Everything has a side effect, right? That we just don't know what it is at the time, and then we kind of learn later on. So the question has to be, what are the risks? What are the unintended consequences? What is it that we don't know at this time on this category? Yes, it's one large molecule. When it breaks down into some amino acids, does that get complexed into some genome and, turns them, causes reproductive problems? What are the potentials, and how is that different in the biopesticide world versus the chemical pesticide world?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that is a interesting question, Monty. So the way I think about it is, we are taking products that are in nature and utilizing them, let's say, in a more concentrated way, right? Rather than creating pure chemistry. So from our perspective, we are using the immunization capabilities of a llama. Very, very unique in terms of the antibodies that a llama produces to fight a pathogen, for example. And we're using that same technology that has been used in the pharma industry for 20 years or more, right? And we know, or we're going into it with a clear understanding of how it works, or how it's intended to work, right? Do we know everything that there is to know? As your example, right? 10 years from now, I don't know the answer to that, right? I mean, we as an industry, and I'll just talk as an industry, right? We all want to do the right thing. Nobody in agriculture, I mean, Monty, you're a grower yourself, right? I mean, we all know we are here to produce safe, healthy, affordable food for the growing population around the world, and we need to do it in a sustainable way. I mean, that is clear. I can't imagine anybody that would argue that point, right? So, given the science that we have available to us today, and in working with regulatory bodies like the EPA, we're doing everything we can to ensure that we do not have off-target consequences that are detrimental to human health, animal health, soil health, at all. But we don't know, Monty. I mean, I to be completely honest, I mean, we only have the knowledge that we have based on the science that's available to us today, and we do it. I mean, if you think about the amount of testing, even for a company of our size, we're talking like tens of millions of dollars testing to make sure what we bring to the market is safe and works as we expect it to do. And if I think about the big companies like the BASFs and Syngetas and Bayers, we're talking billions of dollars, I'm sure, in terms of, their research and development protocols, right? So, yeah, I would say absolutely that is a top mandate for all of us in the sector to do no harm, right? I mean, let's say unintended harm. I mean, I had a comedian, just side comment, talking about growers, and everybody, he's saying, you were everybody sees farmers as a very nice and pleasant people, and he's a comedian, right? He said, "You guys are killers. You kill weeds, you kill, pests and stuff." But that's right. I mean, we have to be very careful in terms of how we produce food with minimal impact right around us, right? But at the end of the day, the objective is to be able to produce profitably for the grower, safe, healthy, affordable food. I mean, that's our objective.
Well, I
So it's a
think that,
long-winded answer. I apologize, Monty, but
oh,
you raised a very, a very valid point and a very interesting question, right? How do we manage that?
yeah, and it's an unfair question to ask, right? As far as tell me tell me what you know about what you don't know, you know. It's
Yeah,
so
exactly.
but I think there's some key concepts in there that people can be maybe a little more assured of is the targeted nature. Okay, just irregardless if it's a naturally occurring or a synthetically manufactured compound, it's still good for something, bad for something else, right? So that and there could be some better things about things that exist in nature, no doubt. But I think one of the keys is how you're targeting, you know, um, very. It's not that protein alignment is only because it's a large molecule protein can only essentially align with that species for bunch rot or excuse me, botrytis on grapes, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just because
Mm-hmm.
there's a smaller uh, target, right? There's less just mathematically and common sense would say there's much less impact. And this is going to be somewhat true with all biocontrols because they're much more targeted by nature versus chemistries of the past. Is that a fair way to say that?
Well, certainly with our product, that is 100% correct. We are looking to bind with the very specific epitope. So I can't think of a more targeted approach than that. A rifle, as you said, Monty, a rifle approach. There are products definitely out there that are much broader, right? Like, I mean, if you putting a microbial consortia in the soil, for example, I mean, there's lots that happens in there, as you know, as a grower, right? Um, but the science would say that these are beneficial microbes, and they do, whatever it is, right? I mean, in terms of nutrient use efficiency, and lots of other great things as well. So you have everything from super targeted, which we are at, to let's say more general let's call it a multivitamin, right? Or a proactive probiotic. I know I've heard some people say that probiotic for your plant or a probiotic for the soil, right? Um, but I would definitely categorize in general that biological products um, have a lesser off-target effect in general than small molecule chemistry, just by their nature, right? Of how they work.
Right. Good point. So let's talk about why does a company basically come from a startup company decide that, hey, I want to do a biocontrol that's going to take us 10 to 15 years to get EPA approval to come to market. Talk about that barrier to entry for startups to get into this market. Like you said, you
Mm,
have 200 and
mm,
found out there's probably 20,000. Um, talk about those barriers to market and why are these companies doing it instead of the big companies like you mentioned, BASF, Bayer,
mm-hmm,
Syngenta.
mm-hmm,
Why is that space existing and what makes that possible?
mm-hmm. So the large companies, Monchi, I can't think of a major player, let's say in the Western Hemisphere, that doesn't have a biological initiative going on. So they're all part of let's say the group of us that are working on this. Uh, in terms of why are there so many, the barrier to entry actually to create something new is quite low, right? I mean, you need a lab, you need a concept, and you can really start doing research, right? Research and development. Lots of it comes out of universities as well, right? That's where we came out of actually as a institution, and enrolled into a publicly traded company. The barrier to entry are several though, right? So one, getting the funding to do your research, right? And then you're competing. Let's just say there's 200. There's many, many, many more than that, but you've got to attract the time and attention of investors to say, okay, your product and your technology is one I'm going to bet on, right? That's going to, deliver something commercially viable. And that's a challenge. And the industry has been garnering money for 10 plus years. And I would say a lot of bets have been made. There's still investments being made, but I would say it's getting tougher and tougher for startups, to really at this stage convince an investor that I've got something truly unique that is worth investing in. Okay, assuming you get the money, the next thing you got to do is build it up to commercial scale. Okay, so you got to go from the lab to small plots, greenhouse small plots to large plots, get all that data together, and then submit for EPA registration. Okay, that's a lot of time and that's a lot of money to get to that. And on top of that, then you got to be able to produce your product at commercial scale, right? So either you're building your own plant or you're convincing somebody to do that for you. Assuming you can do all of that, then you've got to get the time and attention of a customer, a distributor, whether it's a two-step or a three-step distribution network. And if you don't have something that is completely novel, a lot of them will say, I've already got a biological that fits your category, right? Whether it's a biostimulant or a biofungicide or a bioinsecticide, I've got something there. So what do you have that's better that will convince me to take what I already have in my portfolio out and put you in? Because SKU management for retailers is a huge deal, right? You just can't afford to carry 35 fungicides, right, for botrytis, right? You're going to pick your core and it's going to be tough to bump somebody out. So it's not easy. I can tell you that from running, this is my fourth one I'm running. It is absolutely not easy to get all the way to the finish line. And I think at the end of the day, there's going to be quite a bit of collaboration and consolidation so that the companies can, or a company can be of enough size and scale, right, to be a meaningful player in the industry.
And is the hope for a company like yours or others in this space to exist and operate, or is there hope that they prove that a product works, there's demand for it, and for acquisition by one of the larger players in the industry, because then they, almost a lot of them control that sales channel.
Mm-hmm. Well, as the CEO of a publicly traded company, my job is to convince people to invest in our shares, either one or all, right? So yes, I mean, of course, my ambition and our ambition here is to be a relevant player and a leader in the industry, and be attractive to investors, right? And the industry, and I guess time will tell, Monty, but I think that the big players are certainly, I mean, they have, right? They have been acquiring technology that they believe is synergistic to their portfolio, helping them build their platforms. And I think that companies that are able to bust out of the pack, let's say, with something that is truly unique, will have lots of suitors. As a past will indicate, right? There has been, some big acquisitions. There had some big mergers. I mean, Corteva just did a pretty good size one with Stoller, right? and then there's some prior to that. So I think just if you think about the ag chem business in general, Monty, you think about all the way back, right, when we were kids, how many different companies were out there and how many are there today? I mean, I think that's just the way the world works, right? I mean,
Sure.
yeah,
And almost isn't that a way for those companies to de-risk product development? Because, let's
yeah,
say
no,
we know
absolutely.
your company is going to be successful and and it will be a target for acquisition at, many, many multiples, right, of of sales or a high valuation. Um, but for them, they were able to pick your company versus the other 200 that tried but failed. I mean, it's a certain way that they like to de-risk their business, correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, Monty, I was talking to one this week, and the message was basically, I'm going to make a bet across 200 companies that one of you will pop out of the pack, and then that's who I'm going to spend attention. So rather than me trying to develop everything in house, why not leverage all of the expertise that's out there? And then, you know what? I'll make it worth your while at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
If you truly develop something that is, uh, can create value, I think companies will be very well rewarded for that, as you mentioned.
Now, don't you
And
think?
it totally is a de-risking platform. And sorry, Money, to interrupt, it's a way for them to move quickly, right? Very quickly.
So, in a way, it's also a great way to harness the power of entrepreneurship. So, I feel when you get into larger corporations, or as government get approach closer to governmental entities, there's just less inspiration or speed and those kind of things that can happen. Do you think that's another one of the secret sauces to leveraging the power of startups?
Yeah, I know. I mean, Monty, I spent a long time in Agrium, and I thought we moved pretty quick, right? But at the end of the day, we were a big company, a very large company, right? So when I think about how quickly a company like Marrone Bio, um, uh, Biotalys can move, I mean, it's light years difference, right? I mean, we can change directions overnight, literally, right? Between myself, my management team, and my board, um, things can move very fast. And I would say also that, for most of us, we're very focused as well, right? We have to be. So yeah, I think when I was on the other side looking at acquiring companies, it's exactly what you described, right? I'm looking for somebody who has the potential to bust out, or it's already busted out. It's a portfolio or a platform that I can bring into my company, extract synergies, and take it to the next level, right? And that's exactly what Bioseries did with Marrone Bio, right? It's exactly in my view, their strategy, and I think it makes complete sense, right? Just you build it up that way, and you can go from you can double, triple, quadruple your revenue in a very short period of time with products that are proven.
Yeah, yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about how what you're doing with Biotalys and the other biocontrol companies that you've been a part of, how that fits in with the soil health, if you will, movement or regenerative
Mm-hmm.
agriculture movement.
Mm-hmm.
One of the principles is to minimize disturbance of the soil system, and really that boils down to doing less, right? So less tillage, less inputs of all kinds. Um, how does that align, and how does that move regenerative agriculture forward?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit interesting to me that soil health has become a hot topic, because for me it always has been, right? I remember my grandfather going out in the field in spring and grabbing the dirt in his hand and feeling how it flows through his fingers. Is it time to be in with the equipment or not? Is it too right? So I mean, and my father, same thing. I mean, and in fact, my father would say, the soil wasn't as good and isn't as good as when my grandfather was working the land, right? And so soil health for farmers it's been around since beginning of time, in my opinion. And the willingness and desire to protect their most valuable asset. I mean, at the end of the day, the most valuable asset that a farmer has is the dirt. I mean, everything else you could say, I've got combines and tractors. I mean, the dirt is their asset, right? And they know they need to protect it as best they can. So, when you talk about, minimum tillage, I mean, I've spent hours in coffee shops talking about the pros and cons of tracks versus wheels, right, on equipment, right, which is better for compaction and, all of that. So, I mean, it is a ongoing and continuation of a discussion around soil health. Up until recently, I would say that, outside of, let's say, manure, and in California and some other places, they've been using soil amendments for quite some time. The tools available to growers haven't been that robust, right? In terms of what can I apply that will help improve my soil health, my biodiversity of the soil. That's changed dramatically now. There are a lot of products out there that are aimed and targeted at improving soil health, soil fertility, making that whole entire microbiome more robust. And I think I see that continuing. And how do the products work? I mean, there are, as I said, when you get into that biostimulant category, Monty, I mean, there are ones that are really targeted at soil health, right? And there are others that targeted above the ground, right? And for many, many years outside of synthetic fertilizer, we've been focusing on above the ground health. Now we're going back and focusing on below, right? Below the surface health, which to me is a fantastic concept. And I see, the advancements in the industry of the ag biological sector improving going forward.
I think that's very well said. Farmers have always been interested in soil health. It's have we had the tools and the knowledge and all the levers that we can pull to, you know, improve our soils over time. I think that the renaissance, if you will, is rather than accepting what we're terming sustainable today, which is actually kind of a slow decline, if we want to be honest. Looking at how do we improve over time, and I think being very targeted in everything we do, whether it's in pesticides or in nutrition, seeding, harvesting, everything being very, very intentional and minimized. That's going to be a real key, and I think you're in the crossroads here of regenerative ag being one of those things that can really support it. So um, tell me about success and what that looks like 5, 10 years from now. Your impact on the agriculture industry. You're going to look back and say, what?
Well, what my target here, Monty, is that we will have made a difference. I mean, that's why I'm here in the ag sector anyway, right? Is because I want to make a difference, in helping with food production and, making sure we have, that's sort of my walk around statement: safe, healthy, affordable food, right? I mean, that's why we're here. What is our goal with Biotalys is to create a new platform that can bring new and multiple new modes of action to the industry. Like, I mean, completely different than what's been done so far. That's what's very exciting for me. And so when I think about 5 to 10 years from now, we have products that are out that have multiple modes of action that are extremely valuable from a resistance management. They perform extremely well. And my vision, and I know we'll get there, it's just a matter of time. My vision is that we will talk about these products to a grower, about its features and benefits, and then and it'll be at the end, by the way, it's a biological. But you don't lead with, oh, hey, it's a biological, here's what it does. It's like, hey, this thing controls your botrytis, it's easy to use. You've got a fantastic ROI. It basically mimics what you've been used to using from synthetic chemistry. And oh, by the way, it's biological, right? It's better for the world. It's better for your farm. And I think we'll get there. And in fact, when we look at our first product, Evoca, in an integrated pest management program against the standard, we're as good or better than that, right? So, I mean, that's what gets me really excited. And I would say my counterparts, I imagine, would echo the same sentiment, right? That we want to be a integral part of the crop input program around the world, and growers do not have to sacrifice at all in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of yield stability by using our products. And when I say our, I mean the ag biological sector. That's our mission statement, or our long-term vision of where we want to get to.
Very good. You just want to become conventional agriculture. See, you want
Exactly.
That's what I want regenerative ag to be. I just want it to be the standard. Just
Exactly.
the normal.
Yeah, exactly.
We're looking at, I view it as a continuous improvement. We're everything we're doing every year is continuously improving our soil, our financial status, our quality of food, and those kind of things. So, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Kevin, well, what else should we have visited about with our time here together today?
Well, here's what I would leave as a parting thought. There is no doubt that growers are inundated with new technology every single day, right? I mean, whether it's precision ag, or it's new products that their trusted advisor is acting to try on their farm. My advice would be to keep an open mind. Make sure you ask tough questions about the efficacy and the data around these products. But I would encourage growers to try them. I would not experiment or be a research lab for a company, but for products that have a proven track record, if you're not already using them, I would encourage you to look to incorporating them into your operation, because I do believe, and I know that there are products out there that work phenomenally well, that can be integrated into your program, that will provide you a solid return on investment. And I think, obviously, this is the way of the future, right? I mean, the push for consumers to have food produced with less synthetic chemistry is not going away. And in fact, I mean, I can tell you a story. I was on one of Walmart's largest apple suppliers in Michigan a few years ago, and he called us to his farm because he said, I need you to teach me how to grow organic apples, because Walmart said if I don't supply a certain percent of the apples as organic, they're going to go down the road to somebody else who will. Right. So, I mean, that drive from the consumer, ultimately is going to have an impact on every farm around the world. Right. And so luckily, the tools available to growers are improving every year, right? So that's my let's say small bit of advice, right? Is to take a step, if you're not already using a biological, to take a step, across the line and take a look, because I think you'll be surprised at what's out there and how well they can work and how easily they can be incorporated into your program.
I think that's great advice. And to look back on what you said, your quote of safe, affordable, or safe, healthy, affordable food. That isn't a destination, right? You never arrive at that. It can always be safer.
Yeah,
It can
that's right.
always
Yeah.
be healthier, and it can always be more affordable. I think we've made great strides in affordability. From what we've done for industrialization, and that has really driven affordability. Safety is good. You know, can improvements be made in safety? Yes. You know, they really can. But we, at the same time, if we've reached where we want to be on the affordability scale, we don't want to change the affordability to, sacrifice for safety. But I really think
That's
there's
right.
some huge benefits to be gained in the healthiness, and there's a lot of emerging technology coming there, correct? On tying the
Yeah,
health of the
absolutely.
food to the human health. So, and
Absolutely.
biologicals are definitely a part of that. So,
Absolutely. And I say, Monty, in terms of, you know, you were saying slowing down when you use the word sustainability, right? Slowing down. Let's say the negatives. I think that we will come up with technology that will allow us to improve, right? And move forward without, and I mean, there's another big component here, right? Producing safe, healthy, affordable food in a regenerative way, right? I mean, that's another big objective of this sector, right? Is that we are not having any negative uh, consequences of modern day agriculture, right? We're really looking to minimize um, any and all negative effects, and I think we'll get better. We'll just continually get better at it as time goes on.
well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing with us and your experience and leadership that you've provided for this sector with some very big names in the sector. And thank you for that. And I would encourage everyone to check out their website, learn little more about Biotalys and Evoca. If you're a California grower, you are well aware of issues associated with botrytis, and there's amazing applications for that fungus that causes problems in many crops. So it's interesting to see get educated on it, and we wish you and your team the best as you continue to navigate the approval and production processes and getting to market. So if we can help you once that stay in touch on the go to market strategy, happy to be a part of that too. Offer great products to our customers. So thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to these conversations today. I think Kevin said it best when he said the most valuable asset a farmer has is their soil. And we hope you'll reach out to us to learn what we're doing to help growers implement practices that build soil health. You can check us out at our website at asn.farm. From there, you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.